Welcome to the Motherhood Alliance podcast, the podcast dedicated to empowering moms and families on their health and wellness journey. I'm Brittany Suttner.
And I'm Andrea Rinkus. Together, we're here to explore holistic approaches that go beyond conventional medicine.
Each week, we dive into topics that matter most to you. Everything from nutrition and mental health to alternative therapies and natural living.
And whether you're a new mom navigating the early stages of parenthood or a seasoned pro looking for new ways to support your family's well-being, you're in the right place.
Even better, all of our guests are local small business owners who you can actually talk to and work with. You can learn more about today's guest and connect with hundreds of other health and wellness professionals through our informative and easy-to-use directory at motherhoodalliance.com.
Before we get started, keep in mind that this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for personal healthcare advice. Please consult your healthcare provider before making any changes based on the podcast content.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Are you ready to help your family thrive? Let's get started. Hi, we are Britt and Drea from motherhoodalliance.com, and we are excited to welcome you to a 4-episode series with Jen Borley, a master's level registered nurse and a digestive health professional through the Food Enzyme Institute. Jen owns Alo Health, where she offers a wide range of services designed to support whole body function. Jen specializes in functional wellness, something she came to after her own health challenges weren't getting answered through traditional medicine. That personal journey led her to a path of supporting the body's natural ability to heal by identifying underlying stress and creating individualized wellness plans, which you'll hear about more in episode 1. Jen is a lifelong learner, an avid reader, a hiking lover, and admittedly a bit of a plant addict. She and her husband Scott have been married for 27 years, and they have built a beautiful family with 3 sons, Spencer, Parker, and Carter, plus their new daughter-in-law Dakota, and of course, their granddog Drex. We are really excited for you to meet Jen. Let's jump into today's episode. Hey everyone, welcome back. We are in episode 3 here with Jen Borley from Alo Health, and today we are going to be focusing in on talking about the different labs that she offers in her practice, because there are some really cool ones and really unique ones. Even I've never even heard of some of these, and so I think a lot of people hear about certain tests or they hear about different things to try, and they're just like, I don't even know what that is. Is it worth my time? Is it worth my money? Well, we're going to kind of break that down today. You've really become known in our area as like the gut expert, which is pretty cool. So let's talk through some of these tests. Some of them have to do with the gut, some of them don't. But some of your tests require a consult, and then some of them don't. So let's start with the ones that don't require a consult, like vitamin D. Are most people low in vitamin D? Like, why is this a test that is so prevalent?
Well, we live where we live, right?
Yeah.
And that's not only it. There are some nuances with vitamin D, and there's both sides of people who say, well, everybody should be supplementing with it, and some that say nobody should be supplementing with it. There are no absolutes when it comes to this. It really does take a whole picture, because if you are low in vitamin D, there may be multiple reasons why, and some of them don't necessitate you supplementing with it, because vitamin D isn't really a vitamin. It is a fat-soluble hormone. So if you're low in it, you could have issues with absorption or fat breakdown, lipid metabolism. There could be a reason why your levels aren't what are within those norms. And by supplementing with it, we could actually be causing more of a problem and creating more of a stress on your body. So
is that where the 2 different types of tests comes in? Is like one of them kind of showing why you're low, and one of them is tell us how would you know if that's you?
Yeah. So this is where like that little nuances of what we spoke about in a prior podcast of evaluating how your digestion and absorption is working with that palpation exam, and if there's another issue going on in the big picture of it. So the differences in the tests, I only do one kind of test, and it's a blood spot test that actually, we don't collect blood tests in our office. I want to be clear of that, because I'm not a,
You're not a lab.
I'm not a lab,
yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. However, it's a take-home test. Definitely will guide you through it, but it'll tell you where your range is, and there's a lot to unpackage with vitamin D. But to answer your question, many of us up here in the north are low at certain times, but it's not one test that can tell you all the answers to your questions of what ails you. It's very, like I said, nuanced. And also your genetic makeup can have a piece in it as well. we are not near the equator. We're really far from the equator.
Because we get vitamin D from sun.
Our body will, it's the only vitamin, it's the only vitamin our body makes. But really it's not a vitamin, it's fat soluble hormone. So there's a cascade of things that has to happen. And we're too far away from the equator to even make vitamin D from the sun at this time of the year.
Right.
So we really can't make it. That's not to say that we shouldn't be out in the sun. That's another thing that we have, grown like, we are taught to fear the sun, and we need sun every day. Even if it's overcast, we need it.
So in the depths of winters here in Wisconsin, is vitamin D created in any other way, or is it just the sun? And when it's the deep of winter, you're not getting any unless you're supplementing.
So we can absorb some from food, like egg yolks have vitamin D. There are some other foods that have vitamin D, but again, we need to be able to digest and absorb it so that we can take it in and use it. So this is where more like, the stores of vitamin D and it's one nutrient or one element, I guess, that we need to take into the whole picture and consider all of the other little cofactors that go along with it. So we can't make it from the sun at this latitude during this time of the year, but it's not like we're not getting any, as long as you're eating food.
If somebody does need a supplement, what should they know about looking for a vitamin D supplement? And do you carry supplements in your office?
I do, yes. We carry a lot of different supplements in the office. High level with vitamin D supplementation. If you're taking vitamin D, it should be D3. It should be paired with K2. There are some other nutrients that you should make sure are good in your overall dietary intake. Magnesium, zinc, those are all really good things we need to have in balance. And again, sometimes by some symptomatology, you can fill in like, okay, well, we probably need to make sure we're getting those nutrients. And again, not chasing them with individual supplementation. People went way overboard with zinc supplementation, especially during the last several years. And then they depleted their copper levels, and that's not good either. So I don't say, we need to mega dose with anything. There can be some circumstances where adding a little bit more of that vitamin D for a short time can be really beneficial to some people. But again, the overall nutritional picture and overall well-being and wellness behaviors come into play more so often. What can happen when we take a lot of vitamin D, especially if it's just vitamin D or vitamin D2, when we supplement with that, it pulls calcium. And calcium then circulates. And if we don't put calcium back in the bone where it belongs, it can set up shop in the vasculature or your vessels. And then that's where other problems develop. So you can see where we can go down a lot of rabbit holes with that.
Sure.
But it's not a fix-all, cure-all thing. And that's where it's important that we don't just kind of jump on a trend and say, I need to like megadose with it. Some people develop achiness if they're deficient, and some people develop achiness if they supplement with it. So those are things that we have to pay attention to because, again, the liver comes into play as well. It's
oh my goodness. So okay, maybe we should have just done a whole episode on vitamin D.
Well, and this, before we go on, it's just this whole point of saying working with somebody like you is going to be so important because you know all of these different pathways that any one of these tests can, show. Right. So it's just really important to talk to somebody that like Jen, that can really help with figuring all those little details out.
Right.
Because normally it would just be like, I'm just going to go get a vitamin D from Walmart or something. No, don't do that.
Don't do that. Yeah. And don't order from, the trucks that deliver stuff to your doorway. Don't order supplements from them because they don't have controls. So warehouses, big box stores, unless you're ordering right from the company, don't do mail order because there's a lot of counterfeits out there and you may not be getting what you think you ordered, especially when it comes from a big warehouse that's not quality controlled. There can be counterfeits, so just be aware of that. Could you get the real thing? Absolutely. If it's sold from the company that manufactures it, it could definitely be that. But there are a lot of counterfeits out there and those big warehouses don't control that. So good to know.
Noted. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, let's move to nutrition genome testing.
Yeah.
What is that?
So this is like DNA testing, and it's kind of exciting. I always like to premise it with this. When you get DNA testing done, it's not going to give you a diagnosis. So people think, oh, I'm going to finally find out, what this is. And you'll hear a lot about MTHFR.
Oh, yeah.
The gene, everybody has there's different variants of it, and up to 70% of the population of the world has variants. So, but we can dig into that. So the nutrition genome test tests, oh my gosh, just tons of your genetic makeup, what you're predisposed to, what you can behave your way into given your genetic strengths or weaknesses. I usually tend to try to get away from the weaknesses if you can. And what I love about this test is it specifically gives you a grocery list of foods that you should focus on instead of a supplement list.
Oh,
I know, right? Because truly, I believe, yes, our food supply is not what it used to be. We know that. However, we should be trying to get the most of our nutrition from food sources that we can, again, get our hands on, digest, absorb, and eliminate properly. Because when it comes right down to it, let's say you have a supply chain issue, which, we never have that happen.
Yeah, right.
But if we have a supply chain issue and you can't get your hands on a supplement, what are you going to do in its place to get that? Yeah. So let's focus on the foods, getting them into our overall nutrition plan, or, I don't like to say diet because it's the 4-letter D word, but diet is what we eat and what we take in. So that test focuses on that. It also will tell us, okay, are we likely to have higher sensitivities to certain environmental toxins? In my opinion, everybody should stay away from environmental toxins.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like everybody should avoid getting hit in the head. It's like, okay, no brainer there. I actually had a neurologist tell me that once, and I'm like, shouldn't everybody avoid getting hit in the head? Yes. So I digress. So that nutrition genome test is going to really open up, like, looking at how can I best support my body? What exercise is best for my genetic makeup?
So it's not just nutrition either.
Okay.
It is so cool.
Wow. I feel like everybody should be doing this.
Yes. I mean,
just to really, if they're ready to make changes, if that's.
Can I ask what the price point is on this one? Because this is one that you don't necessarily need a consult for. This is something you can just do through your office, right? So what is the price point on this one?
$359.
Oh.
Yeah. And it's a swab. It's a buccal swab. So a swab to your inner cheek, both sides, 2 different swabs. They run 2 parallel tests, and you get the report. You can, we all have heard about, the big blow up with a DNA company that was sharing information. You can choose to have your information deleted after. The one caveat to that is this company does add on reports as they find out more science.
Oh,
and
sure.
They'll update your report. So you can keep that. It'll continue to be updated. So you'll have access to your full report. And at first I was like, I'm going to print mine out. Yeah, no, not unless I want to have like a book that is bigger than this room.
Yes.
Because it really does tell you like all of your genetic makeup and like what you're likely to experience. And then there's lots of little links to explain them.
Oh, nice.
So for instance, in the big one, MTHFR, right? There's different variants. And then you can click on, okay, well, this makes you more likely to, have issues with methylation, with needing to have methylated B vitamins, which really everybody should just, if you're going to supplement with Bs, have them be methylated. Just takes a step out of what your body has to do with it. But it makes sense. Like, pregnant people. Okay, so we've all known pregnant women who just cannot take a prenatal vitamin because what's in a prenatal vitamin? Required folic acid.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, there are variants, and I found out that I have that variant that I cannot process folic acid. It is like a problem child in my body, so it treats it more like a toxin. I need to have like the breakdowns of that. So, methylated folate or, folinic acid. And it makes so much sense because when I was, in that stage of growing baby humans, I could not tolerate a prenatal vitamin. They're like, just take it with food or no, it made me feel really cruddy. And So I went with a whole food supplement instead. And anyway, that just tells me a lot about, if I had known this back then.
How does this change with age? Because our genetics are our genetics, but also, if you had this test done and you're 30, and it's going to tell you kind of the best exercise for your body and probably the best foods and nutrients, is that something that is lifelong, or is that something where like maybe it does change with age?
Or like perimenopause and menopause and things like that?
It's lifelong.
Okay.
Because it's your genes. So your genes don't change. Now, can you turn genes on and off? The study of epigenetics tells us that we can turn certain genes on and off, but it doesn't change that you actually have those genes.
Okay.
So there's things called SNPs, and we could spend probably the whole 3 months talking about all these things, and it's really overwhelming. But really what you need to know is if you want to have this test done, you certainly can. And we actually will meet after the results are back in, and I'll walk you through how to look at it. I'm not going to go to every little spot, but I'm going to show you this is what you want to look at. I am still looking at mine and then putting it away because it's too, it's really,
so much info.
It's a lot, but it's helped me go that totally makes sense. I wish I would have known that 30 years ago, because maybe I could have prevented some of the things from happening.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So like I said, it's not diagnostic. It's not going to say, you have this disease or, but your genetic likelihood, are you a farmer or are you, that kind of thing. And it's really breaks it down to be really understandable.
Okay.
Which is phenomenal.
I love that they can meet, if somebody gets this test, that they can meet with you too.
Yeah.
And just you can kind of explain how to look at it. And
right. It even goes over when's your best time to go to sleep and wake up.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
Okay, we are going to move on to the next one, because holy moly, we could spend a ton of time on each of these.
Yeah.
Yes.
But this one is actually really interesting, and I think is going to perk a lot of ears, is that you also do some testing for mold and mycotoxins.
Yeah.
So, doesn't everybody, those of you listening, raise your hand if you're somebody who has ever wondered, gosh, is there mold anywhere in my house and I just don't know it? What are some, I guess to start out, what are some symptoms that might indicate that somebody has some mold issues? And then tell us about the testing that you do.
Yeah, you bet. So the no consult needed would be the environmental test. So if there's mold in your house or in your environment, that we wouldn't necessarily need to meet for. And if you do have mold in your environment, you definitely need to get that remediated professionally. So these tests, it'll test 2 separate areas, and it's a dust test, which is a really good way to test, because you can test the air, but that may not tell you if it's in the air. It's most likely going to be in the dust in your area, but that can be transient as well, which means it can come and go if something blew in and it was there in the air. Again, I would consult with a professional mold remediation company if you do have mold. If you see mold in your house,
that's one thing.
That's you're past that threshold. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. You definitely want to get that remediated. And one of the number one places that people don't see it is behind their drywall. So if you've had a water issue, you need to get that checked, because even though they say, leave it alone, it's still going to be potentially in your HVAC and all of that. So I would definitely get that tested. We do have the tests for the environment, the environmental test, mold and or mycotoxin tests in the office. And yes, you don't need a consult with that. That would definitely be outside of what I would be able to remediate for you. So I'm not going to come and remediate your mold.
Yeah.
But definitely get some help with that. Then there are the mycotoxin tests for the body, and that is a urine test. Those can be, quite overwhelming for people, because if you have mycotoxins in your body, they're the things that are causing the problem. And mycotoxins are what's left to cause the havoc in your body after mold exposure. So if you know that you have had a mold exposure and are having certain symptoms like brain fog or achiness that's just not explained by other things, and that can be kind of come and go sort of things, and you just can't get over it. They could even be respiratory symptoms, gut issues. It can run the gamut and make you feel like you're crazy. You know, it can give you anxiety and insomnia and all those things. You need to identify it. And then once we identify what's there, we need to support the body binding it and getting rid of it, which is a long process and frustrating, so that can take a while.
So that one, somebody would actually meet with you and work with you to help them.
Correct.
Because
Yeah.
So high level, how do you get that out of your body? Like, is it certain supplements? Is it certain activities you need to do? Like, what is the overall picture for healing from that?
Yes. So first and foremost, those foundational things, because we need to have the body lymphatically taking out the garbage. So what we talked about in the last podcast with making sure the lymphatics are taking out the garbage, making sure that you're getting the right nutrients in, able to digest it, absorb it, and eliminate it. This is, if you guys are grossed out by talking about poop, get used to it, because you have to. Yep. You have to be eliminating. Mm-hmm. Anybody who says it's fine and normal not to be pooping every day, every day, people, every day. If you're eating food every day, you need to eliminate every day. We need to make sure those pathways are open as well, because we need to gather what's going on, the stuff that we need to get rid of, and we need to pass it out of the body. And that's done through, urine and poop and sweat and all of those things. But again, there needs to be an order that we follow it through. Some people have issues with that process, so we need to go painstakingly slowly, depending on the response, because it's usually not the only issue. So oftentimes they've been dealing with it for so long that the body's been under stress, and that those nutritional needs have not been met, and the taking out the garbage hasn't been met. So things are building up. So it's definitely something that we'll usually approach after we've made sure those other processes are working better. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you asked about specific supplements. It always depends on what we find.
Sure.
So there are specific things that you can use for, binding, grabbing hold of and eliminating them from the body. And then it's always based on tolerance, because you'll hear that thing, you're going to feel worse before you get better.
Oh, right.
Sometimes, but if you can't tolerate it, you're not going to stick to it.
Sure.
That's true.
So we may need to balance it out and kind of microdose certain things, make sure certain pathways are open, and then support the body nutritionally through it.
Yeah, that's going to take a long time.
It can.
A lot of back and forth and figuring it out. Yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah. At the fastest, maybe 3-4 months. And many people, it's more like a year.
What are the chances that if you have like a small mold exposure, that you would be holding on to that and that it would be internally impacting you? I just think about, I'm trying to remember where it was, if it was, we were in a duplex temporarily or what, but there was like some windows, where like on the inside you get like that black mold. And okay, we can't stay on every single topic in this episode as much as I want, but like, are there different types of mold that are more prone to like having issues, giving us issues, or harder to eliminate? Or I'm just thinking about like in that duplex, if we had a short exposure to black mold, or you found mold and you didn't know how long it was there, but you clean it up right away. Like, how urgent is that? Like, do people need to get a test done if they've ever had exposure to it?
My opinion, no. I think it depends on the person and the body. So again, based on what your body has gone through, that nature, nurture, your genetics along with your life experiences, what other things are going on. Could it be a piece to somebody who has unresolved health issues? Yes. Okay. So for everybody that's listening to say, I need to go have a mold test done or mycotoxin test done. No, I don't think so. And I'll talk you off that ledge, because, we need to find out what's going on with your body. And
that's why your 15-minute consult is so helpful, because people can just ask questions, be like, honestly, do you think I need this?
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you right away, it might not be the best business model, but I want you not to need me. I really want to work myself out of a job with each person. I want you to be independent and be your own health advocate and be able to manage this on your own. And it can cost you a lot of money. Like I said, you can spend a lot of money on a lot of tests. But if you have unresolved health issues, there's a reason for it. you're not crazy. You're going through something and you need somebody to listen and then say, okay, well, this makes sense. I'm not going to talk you into or out of something. In fact, that's why we go through those other things first, because your body is made to heal. I believe that God made our bodies to be able to take care of these things as long as we give it what it needs and get out of the way. But as humans, we have a hard time getting out of the way.
Yeah, for sure.
We just, and then sometimes people just want to know, but what are you going to do with that knowledge? If you're not going to change anything, then why do the thing?
That's
you know?
All right, well, let's move to gut testing.
Yeah.
So, we had a whole episode on digestive enzymes, and I know that you are very passionate about the gut. So tell us about what tests you offer. What are you typically looking for? Let's just dive into the gut testing piece.
Yeah, microbiome. So the microbiome is pretty fantastic, right? We hear a lot about, like probiotics and different things like that, but it goes deeper. So you've heard of like GI map testing, and I use a different lab that does different microbiome tests, including like a gut IQ test, which is really like very, very inclusive of all the things. So it'll check for the potential pathogens that could be out of balance in your gut, as well as normal flora in your gut. You'll hear about like, bifidobacterium and lactobacillus and Akkermansia and all of that. So when the good bacteria are in good balance, they keep the bad bacteria from overwhelming the gut. But sometimes those little pathogens get out of control. So you hear of symptoms that can lead to feeling bloated and gassy, really stinky gas up or down. That usually gets people's attention. And especially if, you're feeling yucky, feeling pain from bloating and gas, and it's unresolved. Definitely if you're having bleeding or severe pain, you need to go get that checked medically. And some doctors will also test for things like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, like SIBO. You hear about that, and methane and hydrogen producing. So these microbiome tests will check for all of that. They'll also check for parasites and worms and all of that. And then with the gut IQ test, it'll check for your propensity or your likelihood of developing gut diseases. So that's really an awesome test. And then there's like step down tests that maybe remove some of those more advanced testing with that. So I've had a couple of those come back lately, and they're amazing because it identifies what we can support the body through.
Well, and you talk a lot about like how the gut is where you start first, because it seems to be that's the baseline of where you start, and then that's where everything else kind of comes after. So it seems like this is a pretty important test. Like this would be something that everybody kind of should start with.
Maybe, and not start with like, I would start with those fundamental things of, checking lymphatics and digestion, bowel elimination. But if we can't resolve, by supporting that normal healthy function, then that's an indicator that, hey, we could really get some more answers by doing this microbiome testing. So I'm not going to usually start off with that. However, it's usually a piece that will fit in and it'll make sense once we assess and start to address some of those things, and then be like, okay, you know what? This is where the bright, shiny test makes sense to do.
Yeah. And then I know that you also offer hormone testing. So what do you offer there? And then how do you support somebody with hormones?
So the hormone testing, so I can offer Dutch and also EndoInsight, which they're basically the same test, but the lab that I use with EndoInsight testing adds endocrine disruptors to the test. And it's like pretty cool to see that, because we all know if we're being exposed to endocrine disruptors, they're going to have a play on our hormones, because endocrine system is our hormone system.
Can you give us an example of that?
Yeah.
What do you, like when you say endocrine disruptors, I think of like the lotions we're using,
right.
maybe some environment. So when you're saying it's putting those on
it's testing for
those
PFAS and,
okay.
and even lead and arsenic. I know those things can show up. Those are big deal.
Yeah.
Obviously big deals. Really all endocrine disruptors can be big deals, but like you mentioned, we can be exposed to them without even knowing by, go on an airplane, when you're near the back of the airplane, you might be inhaling that jet fuel, and that's going to show up on this test. So that's pretty cool. So that shows up along with the other hormones. And there's a misconception about hormone testing. So this is urine testing, dried urine testing, and then saliva testing for like the cortisol awakening response tests. They all play together with, we think women and men as well have hormone shifts. And so you're testing for the androgens and the precursors to the hormones. So women out of balance with, early like childbearing years, perimenopause, menopause, and it's not about reversing that. Yeah. It's about supporting you so that you feel like you can get through it and not stop it from happening necessarily and support normal function. So that's my approach on that. And supporting your stress response. Again, I'm not going to usually recommend these right away. I do have some people who are like, hey, I really want to do a hormone test. And I'm like, I'm going to try to talk you out of it at first, because again, if we address some of those other things, we may find out that it's not really your hormones, it's your gut we need to work on first. I've had an example of that recently where someone came in saying, my hormones are really off. Well, it ended up she had mycotoxins and some pathogens in her microbiome.
Oh.
And had we done the hormone testing,
I mean, you probably would have seen some hormone issues, but you don't really know what it's caused from, right?
Exactly. Yep, because hormones are further down on that priority sequence. And so when we support lymphatics, diet, digestion, bowel elimination, the inflammatory response, sympathetic overdrive, all those things, when we do it in order, it just works better. We're not hitting that nail with the hammer continuously and not getting anywhere.
So I have a question. We talked about your signature consult in the last episode. Is this, when somebody does that consult, is all these kinds of, I mean, you don't necessarily include all these testing, but you would discover if these testings would be really beneficial for them. And like, does that include, is that part of that signature consult, or how does that work?
Great question. So we can talk about some of them. Usually I'm not talking about them as much, that signature consult, because we're working on supporting those things, the lymphatics, the diet, digestion.
Okay, so it's basically that foundation.
Yes.
Is what it is.
Right.
Okay.
And then the testing, I would sometimes say, if somebody comes in, they really want to do it, I'm not going to gatekeep it and say, no, you can't do it. But I'm going to explain why it makes sense to do these other steps first, and then talk about the tests. And I'll gladly give you the information on the tests. And you can make that decision if you'd like to have the tests done. However, we're going to try to get at some of that underlying stress first, and then hone in on what test makes the most sense that is going to really expedite your wellness journey in the right way. And potentially, I mean, I've had people who are like, yeah, I feel like I've really reached these goals and things are working a lot better now, and I don't really feel like I need to do that test, but it's still out there if they want to do it.
Yeah. I like your approach of how you're like, you may need none of these. Let's try it and do other things first. But these are like tools in your tool belt, which is really cool. Yeah. And you have a ton of other tools in your tool belt too when it comes to therapies. And so this episode was so great to just like touch on each of these and kind of give a brief explanation. I found this super informational. And honestly, I'm expecting the same thing from the next episode. We're going to be walking through a bunch of different therapy options that you offer in your clinic. So I'm really excited to dive into those. So stay tuned for that next episode coming up. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider leaving a rating or review or sharing it directly with a friend who could benefit from the information? We know that you're a busy mom or caregiver, and our goal is to make your life easier by bringing tips and tricks directly from experts into your earbuds. By sharing this episode with someone you love, you can play a critical role in helping to make their life easier as well. We appreciate your time, and thank you for being a part of the Motherhood Alliance family.